Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Reign After Show here on AFTERBUZZ TV as we discuss a better man. Stay tuned.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of Reign. And so I'm here to discuss it. Today, it's just me. Unfortunately, Alina is sick. She got, we're a little bit behind, but she got the Black Plague. Just kidding. No, she doesn't, but she is a little bit under the weather, so she couldn't join me. And Keaton is off doing exciting things, so she couldn't join me today. But I guess I am the better man, and therefore I'm doing this episode. Lots to discuss. So first off, I also apologize. I have a very dry cough. I am okay, but if I cough a little bit throughout, I do apologize in advance. I want to make sure that you guys were afforded an after show for this great episode. By the way, something to look forward to in the coming weeks for episode 13, we have the character of Nicole coming in. So lots to discuss with her character tonight. As well, you'll get the first-hand account for episode 13. That's going to be, that episode will air May 21st for us. So something to look forward to. Speaking of which, might as well start off in France. Lots going on there. Charles, because of Nicole, is really becoming the king that we always want him to be. At least I wanted him to be. And there's that minor crisis. And it's one of those things, when you look at it, that something negative can really be turned into a positive, because through this, as much as Charles has been avoiding any type of conflict, any type of negativity, maybe, he's learned through this that if he has quick judgment, that if he does what perhaps, whether obviously whether the Protestants or depending on the Catholics or whatever, does the quote right thing, that he can come out of this. There's not necessarily a right decision. However, he's learning that he can make these decisions and still be loved, which I think in the past wasn't always the case. However, it comes at a cost, and not even talking about the Henry situation, which I'm certainly going to get into, but more so, it comes at the cost of Narcisse. Catherine, the fact that we love Catherine so much and can forgive her for everything she's done is so amazing and beyond me. I have no way to really explain it, simply because Narcisse, who we've thought from the get-go, and rightfully so, has been this monster. Here he is, not really wanting to do what Catherine's asking, simply because by doing so, Lola's memory becomes non-existent. It's in spite of Lola that he does this, and so Catherine has no remorse for that. She has no sympathy, no empathy, and it is really quite amazing. And yet I forgive Catherine, and I'm curious to know how you guys feel about Catherine sort of pulling these strings in that way. Obviously, I get why she's doing it, and I agree with her sentiment when she says, "I cannot afford to lose another son in this." I get where she's coming from. She's lost a lot of kids in the sense of, obviously she lost Francis, but even just emotionally, she lost a lot through the King Henry, her husband. She's just suffered so much loss that, yeah, I can see her that above all else, family comes first, and she just wants to do this regardless of how Narcisse may feel. And you know what? In some sense, you could also look at it that Narcisse has always put himself in that position, and that if he was better initially, then the Lola storyline wouldn't have gone the way that it did. But in some sense, we digress. Through that, Narcisse, for lack of a better term, claims his love to Nicole, and the two of them continue their relationship. And so that, obviously, she continues to manipulate King Charles in order for the good of France. And that seems to be a theme throughout, as Catherine tells Narcisse, for the good of France, and he obviously has to tell himself. So it was very interesting to see that. Obviously, I'm excited to see the continued storyline of Nicole because of just how much power she, even though Narcisse and Catherine are controlling Nicole, um, she's going to have a lot of power. Um, even though it's a little bit early on, and I know sometimes you guys don't necessarily like this because it may fall into spoiler territory, although this is just my prediction, so it's not a spoiler. I do think that it's going to be dangerous because if Henry learns the control that Nicole has over Charles, then he's going to utilize that for his own gain to become king. One of the fantastic things, it was so interesting to see Catherine with Henry, just to see sort of how she was going to handle that situation. And obviously he lies to her because even though he says that, I just enjoy being the king, or not the king, I'm sorry, the prince, and I get to have fun. Meanwhile, King Charles is the king and he has all the responsibilities. His actions by the end when he excuse me, his actions by the end when he sits down in the throne certainly do not indicate that he's okay with just being a prince, and he's come here for a very specific reason, which is to get a seat, specifically King Charles's seat, so that he may be the king. So lots developing there. Very excited to see. And for those of you who know history of that era, please comment. Would love to get your opinion on how you see this going, how you see this developing, because I think the Reign writers are playing it very perfectly thus far. Maybe not in the sense of the historical context, although we know that Henry did overtake Charles. I do like just the little subtleties and the details of how they're doing it within Reign. Okay. Switching over to England, Gideon and Elizabeth's relationship continues to blossom. It has its ups and downs, right? So at first, everything's good, and I love the way that they have their secret rendezvous in the hot bath, if you will. She asks, were you seen, or something of that nature, and he says no. And they embrace and things like that. I thought that was a very good scene, and I think I like the two of them together. But obviously, as they find out that this presents a lot of conflicts moving forward, because we know, the suitors, she has to pursue suitors, and Gideon has to help with this. And I rather enjoyed that part of it. Just seeing the suitors, number one, when you're that much in love as Elizabeth finds out herself to be, as she realizes about herself, it could be the world's most amazing guy. She's going to have a hard time sort of picking, and that's why it is great that Gideon has that level-headedness to help her out in this quest, if you will. However, just one of the suitors having the most terrible teeth I've ever seen. There's not going to be traction there. But it's always, I know I say it time and time again with this show, but it's always so curious, and obviously within the context of this time period, it's very hard to get away from it. How do you break through, not marrying? You want to marry for love, but obviously you have to marry for status and everything else, and which we'll talk about more so with Mary and her situation with Darnley. But the point is, that they illustrate these sort of internal conflicts of love very, very vividly, very well. So I always rather enjoy those in Elizabeth, and Gideon even. That's obviously what's going through them. I do really love where they do resolve it, in the sense that, what Elizabeth really says to Gideon is quite beautiful. He says something to the effect that I'll only have a certain percentage of you, or and she says it'll be the best part, and I rather enjoy that. So, I think I'm enjoying the storyline. I'm curious to see it develop. And the biggest thing that I'm curious to see would be what happens if there is a Gideon and Mary reunion of any kind. Just them seeing each other. What would be the first thing that they say to each other? Because obviously, as much Gideon's always said in the past that his country comes first. But as I said a couple episodes ago, or I believe at least last episode, finally Gideon's love of his country and love of a woman align perfectly. And, how does he tell Mary that? Does he have to tell Mary that? I'm curious. I'd be curious, by the way, if you guys wrote some fun fan letters of like what would be the first thing that Gideon says to Mary if he were to see her. That would be a fun thing. Feel free to participate, and I'll why don't we read if you guys send enough of them, I'll read a couple of them out loud, or at least the best one next episode. How's that sound? So, let's switch gears over to to good old Scotland. A lot happens in Scotland this episode in particular. We're getting ready for the coronation of Darnley, and in typical Mary fashion, she's entertaining, if you will, Darnley, so that way she can go about and do her own business. And Darnley's very astute later on in the episode, as he says, like, oh, come on, let me participate. I'm not just a figurehead. Oh, that is what you look at me like. And so it very much is. But not to jump too far ahead, because I want to save the child stuff for later. Excuse me. Obviously, a very big episode in the sense of what Mary's trying to do. She invites Hamilton, a Protestant, and she wants to gain his alliance, which is a big, bold play. I don't necessarily disagree with it. It's very tough for me to really gauge that side of it, because I'd have to know the full alliances and whatnot. But the way the show presents it, I'm all in. And she gives him a seat on the council for something which he's very excited for. But you knew, and Alina and I were guessing that you knew that the Emily storyline of what happened and her hatred towards James was going to come back in some sort of way. And in this regard, both John Knox and Emily get huge revenge on Mary and especially James. Because Knox orchestrates it beautifully. He creates doubt within our protagonists, for lack of a better term, James and certainly Mary by the end. All the while filling false information to Hamilton. And so that way both, but the two parties, they suspect each other, and then they turn on each other, and and then it ends up happening the way it does. So very, even though evil, it's masterfully executed by both Emily and Knox to this level, and it just sucks because we're riding on basically cloud nine. From last episode, we got the town's support that we needed. Things are going well, and now this happens, which would be interesting to see what happens if Elizabeth gets wind of this. So we'll see. He put Hamilton, in some sense, he was a potential suitor for Mary, so why not potentially for Elizabeth, if he were not dead, right? Something to think about, I guess. But anyhow, I'm curious to know your thoughts on the Greer and James developing storyline, because it happened, the timing of it. This is why I love the Reign writers and everything that they do, which, by the way, they've been amazingly wonderful in support of us, so feel free to support them at Reign writers. But the way they constructed, last episode we finally get the ball rolling in terms of that relationship, and then this episode we develop a little bit further, only to have James have to leave. And I'm curious to know what you guys thought of their relationship. I 100% love the line of Greer, and I understand why why she said it. She's obviously very close friends with Mary, and she feels this way, and she has no problem challenging Mary in the sense of, how many people do we have to keep sacrificing for the state for everything of that nature. And it's kind of the line we're left on with Mary in that sense, the sentiment, because she's left wondering. I mean, we talked about it a couple episodes ago. Finally, the fact that Mary is able to build this trust with James, which she didn't always have, and obviously it's a blood relative to her, and they were developing quite nicely. And unfortunately, those ties are now severed. And I'm wondering, just in general, will we see James? Obviously, I'm sure you guys agree at home that we do want to see James, very much so. But will we is a whole different story. And I'm curious if you guys have any prediction as to maybe James could come back in some sort of way. Not in terms of the show, but obviously, more towards like coming back into Scottish court. I'd be curious to see if you guys think that could happen, and if so, how. But in terms of Darnley and Mary's relationship, we know history's not on their side in terms of working anything out. But I would love to see something, because I have such respect for Mary. I wish there was a way to make things work out better between the two of them. I want to believe him when he says, like, I'll be a better husband, I'll be a better father, and all those things after he finds out that they're having a child. But historically that has not proven to be the case. So we'll find out on that side. Other than that, that's basically the episode. Again, if it's hard to have a conversation and a dialogue going when it's just you solo, meaning me. So I hope you guys appreciate my thoughts and opinions on this episode, and that and by all means comment in the comment section below. I want to hear your guys' opinion, and I'll talk with you guys there. I'm sure Lena will talk with you guys there, even though she's bedridden right now. That she's seen the episode and contribute that way. So, but without further ado, why don't we move to Cast Corner, and then we'll do predictions for next episode. So, today's Cast Corner, this is contributed by Alina. It is Castle de Haar in the Netherlands, and it is it is the oldest historical record of a building at the location. The oldest historical record of a building at the location. The current castle dates to 1391. In that year, the family de Haar received the castle and the surrounding lands as gifts from Henrik von Woderen. The castle remained in the ownership of the de Haar family until 1440, when the last male heir died childless. The castle then passed to the von Zulen family. In 1482, the castle was burned down and the walls were torn down, except for the parts that did not have a military function. These parts probably were incorporated into the castle when it was when it was rebuilt during the 16th century. In 1887, the interior of the castle ruins. I'm sorry, I apologize. In 1887, the inheritor of the castle ruins, Anton van Zulen van Nivevelt, married Helen de Rothschild of the Rothschild family. Fully financed by Helen's family, the Rothschilds, the couple set about rebuilding the castle from its ruins. For the restoration of the castle, the famous architect Pierre Coupers was hired. He would work on the project for 20 years, from 1892 to 1912. The castle has 200 rooms and 30 bathrooms, of which only a small number on the ground floor have been opened to be viewed by the public. So, truly a wonderful castle. If you're watching along in terms of pictures, To me, if you think of almost like a Disney castle, this is a Disney castle. If you imagine Beauty and the Beast, this looks like a castle that could be used for Beauty and the Beast. I know it's not 100%, like if you look at it, it doesn't 100% resemble those things, but it's got moats. It's beautifully lit at night. It's got the gardens. I think, you know, it's truly magnificent. And when the sun hits it, I mean, these photographs are just so artistic. And again, the gardens, the flowers that bloom, they're absolutely fantastic. So thank you, Lena, for pulling that. Wonderful, wonderful castle. So I'm glad we got to highlight it on this this week's episode for Cat's Corner. Anyway, let's move on to predictions and wrap things up for this episode.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Okay, so what do I predict? Not necessarily a prediction, but obviously just kind of more observations based on the teaser. I'm blanking on our friend's name, but Mary's historical future third husband. She goes back to him. You know, I think thanks to Greer's words, Mary probably feels alone in this world now that James is gone, and so she's going to look to him for a lot of comfort. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what Henry does. As I predicted earlier, I think he's going to use Nicole, or at least he's going to start to see Nicole's value and how she's able to manipulate Charles, and then use it to his advantage. So I'm curious to see that develop, and so we'll find out. I'm also curious to see what you guys think. Please comment below. I know I said that a couple times, but I love interacting with you guys. I know Lena does. We do love reading those, and a lot of the Reign writers read that as well, and it only helps us get guests. So, as I mentioned, Anne, who plays Nicole, will be coming for episode 13, May 21st. The episode itself airs May 19th, but we tape the show on Sundays, so May 21st for us. We'll keep you abreast on any other guests that we may have. And that's it. Thank you guys for joining me. I know it's always, for me, a much more fun episode when I have some interaction, but I hope you guys had as much fun as I always do, because I love the show so much, and I do love talking about it each and every week. So thank you guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterbuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.